Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, The Untapped Opportunity in Simulation. My name is Maria Ma, the Marketing Campaign Coordinator at engineering.com, and I'll be your moderator today. First, a few housekeeping items to cover. Today's webinar will be recorded, then available for on-demand replay on engineering.com. Your PDH certificate will be emailed to you 24 hours after this webinar. If you have any questions, you may submit directly in this webinar interface, and we'll try to address all questions during Q&A at the end. If we happen to run out of time, we'll be sure to follow up through email. Now let's kick it off with a few poll questions. Do you use a presentation-based method like PowerPoint to share simulation results? Please let us know yes or no. I'll give you a few more seconds. Perfect. So 77% said yes. Thank you for that. Next, how long does it typically take for your analyst to create a simulation report? Is it 1 to 4 hours, 4 to 8 hours, or more than 8 hours? I'll give you a few more seconds. Looks like majority said 1 to 4 hours. Last, how many CAE reports on average do you generate per month? 1 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, or more than 100? A few more seconds. Looks like majority said 1 to 25. Thank you for everyone who participated. Now, without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to our first presenter, Chief Analyst and CEO at Lifecycle Insights, Chad Jackson. Over to you, Chad.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate it. And thanks for inviting me to present today alongside VCollab. I appreciate the opportunity. So let's talk about simulation. We've been talking about the application of simulation in a lot of new spaces lately. Simulation-driven design has been an issue that we've been talking about in this industry for quite some time, even decades. But there are emerging spaces where simulation is being applied that are critical to the business. We talk about digital twins, for example. And also we've talked more and more about how do we make analysts more productive. We talked about simulation automation and things like that. So all of these types of issues, these technology-led initiatives are the things that we as Lifecycle Insights cover. We publish research and thought leadership, giving advice to engineering executives on how to adopt such initiatives and get value out of them very quickly. And my role, I'm the chief analyst there at Lifecycle Insights, and I cover a lot of these topics, and it's an exciting area. So today, we're going to cover a number of issues related to how do analysts and engineers communicate back and forth around the results of simulation. And this is a key tactical capability that is fundamental to realizing the value of simulation. So today, we're going to talk about that in terms of three major issues. So first, we're going to talk about the trends that are driving more and more collaboration around simulation and analysis. Second, we're going to talk about presentation-based simulation collaboration. I know that's a mouthful, but the whole idea there is that you're using presentations to capture simulation results, communicate that to engineers, and then collaborate back and forth. And 77% of you on the webinar say that you're basically doing this today. So we're going to talk about that. What is it? What's the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And then we're going to talk about a new approach to collaboration for simulation and analysis. One that is more model-based and visualization-based. After that, we'll get into some questions and answers. So let's get started. Let's talk about what's really driving a lot of companies to want to get better with collaboration between analysts and engineers. So one constant in the industry, if you've been in engineering for a while, it seems like this is not changing. It's that schedules continue to shrink and budgets continue to get smaller. It seems, despite whatever's going on with the economy, however much investment is going into R&D or technology development, executives always want to do it better and faster and with less dollars, right? So lots of industries are seeing the squeeze on profitability. So simulation is seen as a real opportunity to do all sorts of things, to improve products, to take cost out of products, to boost innovation in products, all of these things, right? So this is one of the constant trends that continue to drive companies towards simulation. The other thing is to use simulation earlier and more pervasively in the development process, right? So this is a strategy that many organizations are pursuing. In some cases, it's the analyst that is performing these analyses. In some cases, it's the engineer. But it's not just, okay, let's use simulation and design anymore. It's, hey, concept design looks different in the way that you use simulation compared to detailed design or verification and validation, or even the tail end of the design process, the tail end of detailed design. So there is a greater need for collaboration between experts and the people designing the products, the engineers. So this is another trend driving more collaboration. Another one is faster and easier verification and validation, right? So I think we all know that there is I don't know if I call it a shortfall, but there simply aren't enough analysts in the world to do all of the work that engineering organizations need them to do, right? So there is, alongside the emphasis on simulation-driven design, there's also an emphasis on, okay, how do you take these precious resources, these extremely knowledgeable resources, and how do you make them more productive, right? So how can you make them, get twice as much throughput as possible? Because I think we all know expert analysts have these deep queues of work. And how do we let them get through more of that and add more value to the company? And finally, another trend that is driving a lot of collaboration around simulation is this, or the need to make it more efficient and better, is the fact that lots of people are, in different regions around the world. So, kind of follow the sun strategies for design and development. And what this means is that, if you have an engineer in Asia and you have an analyst in the US, and you can't communicate efficiently, you lose days because they're working at different times of the day, right? So if they don't catch each other, if they don't communicate efficiently, you can lose a significant amount of time in the development process. So these are all the trends that are driving the need for greater collaboration around simulation. So let's shift gears now and talk a little bit about presentation-based simulation collaboration. And again, 77% of you say that you're doing this today, and 91% said you're creating 1 to 25 of these types of simulation results per month. So let's explore this a little bit. So what's the deal here? What are we talking about? So the idea here is that expert analysts will conduct a simulation. They'll have the results in a post-processor. And what they do is they take screenshots. They place those screenshots in a PowerPoint presentation, maybe another presentation. Maybe they're just screenshots that are then shared. But then they add commentary on top of that as text. Okay. So that becomes the deliverable that is then passed over to engineering. So let's talk about the implications here. Right. So there's a certain amount of time that an analyst will spend viewing results and adding their commentary, and that's highly value added. Let's be very, very clear about that. They're adding a lot of expertise, a lot of guidance to the engineer about the interpretation of the results. Then there's this chunk of time that is taking screenshots, putting them in a PowerPoint presentation, kind of managing that deliverable through the process. And let's be real frank, that's not a high value add use of an extremely valuable resource for the organization. So there's a significant disadvantage. And let's, don't forget here that we're talking about collaboration. This isn't a one-time thing. You document results, pass it off to the engineer, and then you're done. For one design, this might happen 2, 3, 4, 5 times, right? So you're multiplying that non-value added time of managing a PowerPoint presentation with screenshots in it 4 or 5 times, right? So again, not a great use of the analyst's time. Let's talk about the other end of this real quick. So an engineer gets these results in a presentation format. They're looking at these screenshots, and there's a few issues here. Number one, they can't visualize it. And what I mean by that is they can't spin it, they can't zoom in, they can't pan, they can't visually interrogate the results. But number two, they can't specifically interrogate the results. They can't pick a spot on the results and say, well, what's the value there? Okay, well, why is there a hot spot here? Why is, the fluid flow kind of in a vortice over here, right? So you're getting a very degraded version of the simulation results, right? And this spurs more correspondence, right? So when it is not clear what, when they have outstanding questions about the results, they want to know more, they want more insight into performance, they will send a request back to the analyst. And maybe they don't even have to run another analysis, but maybe they need to add more screenshots to the PowerPoint presentation. And again, not highly value added for a very valuable resource, right? So there's detriments on both sides, both for the analyst and for the engineer, and significant problems going back and forth. So let's talk a little bit about this new approach around sharing simulation results and collaborating on those results. So the idea here is you use a model-based approach, right? So the analyst has his simulation results. You have a editor where you can open those results. You can add commentary. You can add saved views. Basically, you can give a tour of the results. And you're not taking screenshots. You're not managing another deliverable like a PowerPoint that is a degraded version of the results. This opens the results natively, and it minimizes the non-value added time the analyst spends creating this thing. So it's streamlined in that effect, in that approach. So the idea here again is that you spend a lot more of your time on adding value, adding into the commentary. And again, from the poll question that we requested at the beginning of the presentation, 47%, so they spend 1 to 4 hours creating these deliverables, 31% 4 to 8 hours, and 22% is more than 8 hours. So, this kind of speaks to the reality of creating these results for engineers, adding commentary. There's a significant amount of time being spent on that today. So if you can cut that in half, if you can cut that by a quarter, if you can cut that by 3/4, you're talking about a significant amount of time. Let's talk about it from the engineering side, the engineer's perspective of this. So you can set up this guided tour of the results with saved views, commentary, and the engineer can take that tour around the simulation results. In addition to that, they can also visually interrogate the results. They can spin it, pan it, zoom in on a certain area. But they can also, if you want to give them this capability, and this is something that can be controlled, you can let them interrogate for different values on the simulation results as well. So they're getting a lot of value out of this as well. There's significant advantages because there are fewer requests back and forth. So there are a few implications here. Number one, we saw in the initial creation of the results, the analysts can spend less time doing it, and the time they're spending is value add. But here we're talking about reducing the number of requests to the analyst because the results are more clear, because the engineer can interrogate them more directly and independently themselves. But in addition to that, think about what you're doing on the engineer side. You're enabling for them to make a faster, more informed decision, right? So you can do a couple things with that time that you're saving. Number one, you can allow them to make that decision faster and get on to other tasks in the design process, if that's how you want to spend your time. Or you can explore more iterations on that design, uncover something more innovative, right? So it depends on what your company wants to do with it. So this is frankly a win-win for both roles in the process. So 91% said you create 1 to 25 of those per month. You will get fewer of those as a result, and you will spend less time overall. So let's circle back and do a quick recap. Number one, we talked about the need for simulation collaboration. There are many drivers that are forcing companies to really reconsider how to do this. So number one, schedule and budget is getting shorter. There's a couple strategies that companies are pursuing in terms of early simulation, as well as how to make verification and validation more efficient and effective towards the end of the design process. We talked about presentation-based results that are very time-consuming and frankly non-value added for a portion of that task for analysts. And then also we talked about on the engineer side, all these iterations that you go through, you're getting a very degraded view of the simulation results, and it's prolonging the overall process. And then we talked about this model-based approach where, frankly, in this approach, analysts are simply adding the guided tour, the commentary to give more insight to the engineer. The engineers are getting something where they can interrogate it more directly and independently themselves, allowing them to make faster and more informed decisions. And on the analyst side of things, it means fewer iterations in creating those reports. You'll create fewer reports. You'll spend less time creating these reports. So that is my part of the presentation. This time I'd like to hand it over to Steve Brown from VCollab, and he'll talk a little bit more about how VCollab supports this approach.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you to everyone attending the webinar today. Let me walk through a few slides here to follow up on Chad's excellent insights there. Just a little bit about VCollab. Today, we have 3 offices around the globe, headquartered in Troy, Michigan, with other offices in Richardson, Texas, and Bangalore. We have over 100 customers globally in many of the bigger verticals. We're partnered with many of the leading CAE and PLM companies out there, and we're also an active member in the NAFEM's SPDM working group. As we talk to our customers and new prospects, what has emerged is, and this is a high-level representation of it, but a somewhat fairly typical CAE process leading up to the PowerPoint reports that we've been talking about today. What we found here is that in many companies, most of the first 3 steps that you see here in gray have automated this to a large extent, either through better capabilities from the vendors or through automation strategies implemented by the companies. But what we almost hear in every case is that post-processing and generating the CAE reports remains a largely manual process. Again, with a very valuable resource there being the CAE engineer, having to spend a lot of time creating these reports. And then actually once the reports are created, as Chad mentioned, the context can be unclear because of the nature of the PowerPoint reports to downstream stakeholders. In this area here you see boxed in, this is where VCollab can help companies address those pain points. And how we do that is in a couple of ways. You heard me mention that the post-processing and CAE report generation steps are largely manual. We can automate those or help automate those with the VCollab environment. In most cases, reducing those steps down from days and hours to minutes. And, on average, somewhere between 50 to 80% efficiency improvements in the time it takes to go from native results to actually creating a CAE report that can be shared with downstream stakeholders. The other way that we help companies is by enabling quicker and better decisions with those downstream stakeholders. Today, the typical CAE engineer will create a PowerPoint report. Those images will largely be static slides, and Chad mentioned some of the challenges with that. With VCollab, we will create a report that will look identical to what you create in your PowerPoint version of the report. Only the information will be completely dynamic. You'll be able to probe it. You'll be able to, twirl it around, zoom in, cut sections, whatever you want. But you'll be able to interrogate this in a much more intuitive way. I can't tell you the number of release engineers we've spoken with that have told us, boy, I get a PowerPoint report and I look at the image and I just wish I could turn it, another 15 degrees, or I could look at the back side of it and see what's going on there. So with VCollab, we will help you create a report that is going to enable all of those things which will allow the people that need to interrogate those analysts of reports, allow them to do that much quicker, better, and make those redesign decisions quicker and the first time, hopefully. So with that, I will now turn it over to Adi, and she will walk you through a brief live demo.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Aditi Bhatnagar. I'm an application engineer at VCollab. So I will be showing the demo today of how to generate actionable simulation insights using VCollab products. Actionable simulation insights is nothing but the 3D live report. For that, the very first step is to convert the CAE data or the CAD data that you have into a CAX format. Now, this CAX format is basically the proprietary format, and it is being used by VCollab products. All right, so this is the vMove CAE GUI, which will convert the CAE data into the CAX format. Similarly, we have vMove CAD. Right now, I'm just loading one of the CAE models. We have all the supported files, for the Abacus, Nastran, ANSYS, LS-DYNA, and others. For the details of all the products which we support, please visit our company's website. Right now, I'm using one of the files for the CAX conversion. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, the geometry and other element sets will be populated. On the right-hand side, the results will be populated. Usually, an analyst won't need the full set of results. So, an analyst can go ahead and filter those. And also, analyst can create the results like this really quick. Once the results are created and filtered out, analyst can go ahead and save that as a CAX file. The CAX file has been saved. Now the second step or the next step is basically to open up the VCollab Pro. This is how the VCollab Pro GUI looks like. I'm opening one of the models. This is called brake calipers. So now analyst will go ahead and see what kind of results he or she has imported. One misses stress, displacement, and some contacts. Now, what VCollab Pro does is automatically it'll generate the actionable simulation insights. And for doing that, we go ahead and use the hotspot finder. Now this is the hotspot finder. The specialty about this hotspot finder is it will automatically data mine the result values for you, and it removes the risk or errors of finding the hotspots manually. For now, say for example, if I want to find the top 5 hotspots, I can say top 5. I can also set up the material limit. Like say for example, here I'm just using 500 megapascal. So what it is going to do is going to highlight all those annotations which have or has the one misses stress greater than 500 megapascal. We also provide the option of masking certain areas. In those areas, the hotspot finder will not find those results. Now we have one more option called add viewpoints. What this option does is it goes to each and every part, calculates the top 5 hotspots, and it will write out the 3D viewpoints. The 3D viewpoints are nothing but the 3D slides or live images. Now I'm going to go ahead and find out the hotspots. Now what it has done is basically it has created the hotspots. It has created the hotspots based upon all the parts like that. Now, say for example, if I want to see here my one misses stress, I can go ahead quickly, switch to one misses stress again, and find the hotspots really quick like this. Now it has figured out some red areas or hotspot areas like this. Now we have one more capability of um, creating something called maximum envelope of a result. Right now, I can create the maximum envelope of a von Mises stress. What it is going to do, it's going to go ahead and create the maximum of all the load cases, generate a color contour plot, and plot it up. So it's very quick to generate its maximum envelope results like this. I can go ahead, I can generate it. Now, what would make more sense is like if I can animate this, and because like I will be generating this actionable simulation insight report as an analyst, and I will be giving this report to DE or release engineer. So I should create one animation like this. I'm setting up few controls. I can also adjust the state scale factor, and I can go ahead and hit animate. Now, say for example, if you want to pivot on a particular point, you can quickly stop the animation. You can go ahead and pivot it. Apply again and animate. I can adjust the frame rate. Now it makes more sense. Now what I can do is either I can go ahead and update this viewpoint, or I can add that as a separate viewpoint. I would add that as a separate viewpoint. So, and also with this one, what I'm going to do is I can add notes here. Like say for example, check here. I can change the fonts like this. Again, go ahead and update it. I can also change the fonts for these labels. They are not static, they are movable around the screen. You can also arrange it with the help of the arranging algorithm using arrange labels like Silhouette. So it will automatically arrange those labels for you. Since these are not static, they have, say for example, if I want to not display the node IDs, I can uncheck that. Now no node IDs are displayed here. We can edit the font. We can also change the position like this and quickly update the slide. Now, technically, the job of an analyst is done here. Right now, I'm using the white background. An analyst can use companies VCollab or companies, their own company's background, and they can also enter the text backgrounds as well to make it look more like a report. Now, after this, the next step is to export out this generated CAX file. Now, the CAX file can be exported out in two ways. One way is to export it out in the CAX format. Another one is to export it out in HTML format. I'm going to export it out in both the formats. Firstly, I'm going to export out as a CAX one. Now, I'm going to export it out as an HTML. Before that, I'll just set the animation one more time. In HTML format, we do provide the password protection feature as well. Now it is saving up the current view path containing the 3D slides as an HTML file. Now if I look at my screen here, I have the CAX file and I have an HTML file. Now say for example, if analyst wants to forward a CAX file to a DRE or release engineer or to lead or to somebody else, the person would go ahead and send out this CAX file. Upon receiving this CAX file, a design engineer would go ahead and double click on the CAX file. This CAX file will automatically get open in one of the other products of the VCollab called as VCollab Presenter. VCollab Presenter is the lighter version of VCollab Pro, and the design engineer would quickly take a glance of the viewpoints or the 3D slides which were generated by an analyst and would come to a critical slide right here, would animate it, and would quickly understand that this is the problematic area which analyst wants him to check. Quickly stop it. Maybe add a comment saying that, okay, increasing the radius by 5 units, and go ahead and update that. Now an DE would not give back the SCAX file again. What the person would do is the person will export out the viewpoints from here. Now the viewpoints will look, it's a session file, and it will look like a very small file by the name VPT. Now this VPT, once an analyst receives its back, what an analyst would do is import those VPT file or that session file back into the VCollab Pro session. And now analyst knows that, okay, the release engineer or design engineer is working upon it and has passed on the message of increasing the radius by 5 units. This is one way of communication to DRE or DE or to leads. The other option which an analyst can go for is through HTML format. Now, HTML format actually provides most visualization stuff. You cannot probe in it. You cannot do section in it, anything at all. This gives you the data privacy or IP privacy for that. So if it is required to have the data privacy, then HTML format is recommended. Now, this HTML file will get opened up automatically in the web browser. I'm going to show it to you right now. See, this is an HTML file and it automatically got opened up in the Chrome browser. It can get opened up in any of the browsers for that matter. Now, this is interactive, live. It is not static anymore. We do provide different display modes like shaded mesh, wireframe, hidden lines, points, and transparency. For an animation like this, we do provide animation controls like to stop it, play it back again, increase the animation speed, increase the deformation factor as well. So these are the features that we provide in HTML. And with that, I will say that for the HTML file, we don't need any additional software installation of whosoever is consuming this HTML file. And whereas in VCollab Presenter, you may need the VCollab Presenter license. With this, I'll end my demo and I'll pass on the control to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Adi. Let me continue here. So you saw a brief demonstration of the capabilities of VCollab Pro and VCollab Presenter in our HTML environment. This is a representation of what that workflow would look like. Again, starting with native CAE results from many of the most popular commercial tools out there, or CAD designs even, taking them into a lightweight compressed CAX file. That moves into our VCollab Pro environment. This is where the analysts will be able to leverage the automatic data mining and report generation capabilities to create the CAX-based report. And then, of course, as Adi showed you, we have the ability to share those reports, again, which will have all the same content you're used to providing today, only in a live 3D fashion, either through our CAX-based report, which has some capabilities for the VCollab Presenter environment, typically utilized by design release engineers to easily edit the versions of the reports and cut down on that churn between the analyst and the release engineers that Chad mentioned earlier. Or you can share it in an HTML format with all of the 3D capabilities and animation capabilities preserved with other stakeholders that may not have the presenter on their desktop. All they would really need is a browser at that point to review the information. This is a partial list of our current customers. You can see we are actively used in many different large verticals out there, automotive and aero, high tech, as well as a couple of others. This is an ever-growing list, but we wanted to share with you some of the bigger names that you might recognize. And then we would encourage you, if there's interest in this capability, to reach out to us and invite us in for a one-on-one interaction with your company. We can probably get into a demonstration and in a little deeper way at that point. But we always offer this up to new companies that are interested in the VCollab technology, and that is, if there is interest, if there is a good fit in terms of the value that we can add, we offer up a no-risk, no-cost proof of concept where we will sign your NDA and then have you share with us some native results of your choosing, along with a standard report structure from a PowerPoint. And then we will show you how VCollab can automate the creation of that report within the VCollab environment at a follow-up meeting. So with that, I will now turn it over to Maria. I guess we're back to questions at this point.
Great, perfect. Thank you, and thank you to all presenters. Now let's answer some of your questions. Our first question comes from Jim. Can the report creation process be automated?
Yes, this is Steve. Yes, absolutely. You saw an example of that in Adi's presentation. Out of the box, VCollab can deliver many automated capabilities to reduce the level of effort required to create the various slides and images that you would want to share with the product development teams. We believe that on average, just using the out-of-the-box capabilities in VCollab Pro, you're going to see somewhere around a 50% improvement in the time it takes to create slide decks to share with others in your organization or in your supply chain. If you are interested in even increasing that further, we have a capability where we can create more of an end-to-end automation template, and that's where we see the really high levels of efficiency gains. We have worked with companies where they have reports that might take up to 2 days to create, and through the use of the automation templates that we can enable, we've seen that taken down to 5 to 10 minutes. So the levels of efficiency gained are quite compelling. And again, the information created will look identical to what you would normally create, although it's completely live.
Hey, I'd like to jump in on that question as well. I think with a lot of different simulation tools that you see out there today, there's a lot of automation capabilities to kind of dump a bunch of screenshots into a PowerPoint presentation or Word document. And that, that's interesting. However, I think what you got to be aware of in that circumstance is that it is still this very degraded set of results or views on the simulation results. So, automation with, this model-based approach is really great. Just realize that they're not apples to apples. The output or the outcome of these two different approaches are very different. It's great that each can be automated, but again, this model-based approach is very different in terms of what it takes the analyst to create them and for the engineers to consume them. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Perfect, thank you. Next question comes from Pramod. What is the effect of model error on simulation result?
I will ask Prasad Mandava to answer that question. He's the CEO and founder of VCollab.
All right, thanks. This is Prasad Mandava. So there's no model error. I mean, what we have in the results file and what you as an analyst or an expert like to export is what you tell us to extract, and that's what we extract. So technically, what you want is what you get into the report. That's my answer.
Great, thank you. Next question comes from Barry. Does VCollab work with Creo Simulate?
Yes, the answer is
yes.
Perfect. Next comes from Bob. Can a report include pre-processing info such as material choices, stress targets, etc.?
The answer is yes.
Awesome. Next question comes from Jamal. Can you share a model on the cloud so no need to send files back and forth?
The answer is yes.
Awesome. Next comes from Huls. Does VCollab have integrations with commercial SPDM systems?
I leave Steve to explain that.
The answer is yes. As I mentioned in my first slide, we have relationships with many of the big CAE commercial companies out there. As an example, we are many times included in MSC Sim Manager environments as part of that overall solution. And we have relationships with many of the other big players as well.
Awesome, thank you. Next question comes from Peter. How much time does VCollab save for simulation analysts?
Well, this is Steve again. Yeah, it can vary depending on the level of automation you want to try to build in. Again, our experience tells us that using VCollab out of the box with some of the automation capabilities that you saw Adi demonstrate, on average, people will see a 50% improvement in the time needed or required to create their reports. If you have something that is highly repeatable, the report structure is well understood. Again, we have the ability to enable the creation of automation templates that will provide a more end-to-end capability where essentially once the CAX file is created, after the native result is finished, it can really move from that to a finished report, and then allow the analyst then to go and open that report up, add in whatever additional information he may need to finish the report, and then save that off and go from there. And in those cases where we see companies using that type of an automation template, again, the efficiency gains can be 80% plus.
Awesome. Next question comes from John. Can I include 2D images within a VCollab report?
Yes, the answer is yes. Yeah, the advantage of that Chad mentioned, the model-based report that Chad was talking about, and as demonstrated by Adi, the uniqueness is you can combine the 2D content traditionally they were making with a 3D content. So to answer the question, yes, you can actually, there's a lot of times the information is not even available in the input decks and the output format. Maybe some information came from text, the testing. So VCollab allows you to combine the 2D and 3D content in those model-based reports as live reports, rather, yes.
Perfect, thank you. Next comes from Adrian. Which CAD and CAE formats do you support?
That's a long list. I'll leave it to you, Steve.
Well, no, it is a very long list. ANSYS, Abacus, Nastran, the popular big Creo, too long to list here in a verbal form. We can happily send you an email with the actual coverage. It's actually available on our website if you want to go there and look. But yeah, the list is long and it's ever growing as we continue to work with new customers. Their needs are driving us to add additional coverage for new tools all the time.
I just extend to what Steve said. On the CAD side, we pretty much cover most of the popular CAD like NX and KTS and SolidWorks and most of the standard formats like STEP and IGS and all that. And as Steve said, yeah, you can write to us or visit our website.
So Saeed asked specifically, is ML and AI supported?
I'll leave it to you, Steve.
Well, so that's a very interesting question, and certainly it's a question that many organizations are looking at very seriously as they are continuously under more pressure to get more out of their simulation investments. The idea of machine learning or artificial intelligence is certainly getting lots of discussion, at a lot of large companies in particular. We can work with those environments quite nicely. Actually, we've just recently had a conversation with a large automotive OEM. They're interested in developing a machine learning environment where they would like to create a large data lake where they capture each one of their runs, although their result files are very large, and it would be impractical to try to create the data lake around the native result files. In this particular case, they're interested in VCollab as a way to compress those results down to a much smaller size, and then use the CAX format as a way to preserve that information in the data lake, and then wrap machine learning around that for their purposes.
Great, perfect. So that's all we have for this webinar. Thank you to all attendees, and thank you to the Lifecycle and VCollab team. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.